definitely recommend for beginners, and then once you're a little more advanced, you can just start playing around with baits, different applications. Oh, there's a good one. A better one. Oh, he's okay. Pretty skinny. In the corner of the mouth. Let's grab this guy. Not too bad. Pound and a half. I knew there had to be some down there on that lipless. I was yo-yoing it and they weren't eating it, so I just started kind of slow reeling it and ticking that grass. And there she goes. Hey, welcome back, y'all. Finally made it to part 5 of my top 5 baits of the fall season series. If you haven't checked out the past videos, definitely check out my channel and scroll back through those videos because it's a lot of great information. We started off with jerk baits, we talked about shallow crankbaits, and then underspins and Alabama rigs. So kind of rounding it off, and today we're going to talk about lipless crankbaits, another great bait, confidence bait for me. This time of year and really year round, it'll catch fish. But yeah, huge player this time of year. I actually caught a solid fish this past weekend on the LV 500, which is one of my favorite lipless crankbaits. And yeah, just years past, it's caught a lot of fish for me. So kind of gonna have that one ended off for the series. Hopefully y'all got a lot from it. Let me know in the comments section if you're enjoying this series. Feedback is great for me as I'm just new to YouTube and trying to figure out the content that y'all want to see. So let me know. But I'm planning to continue doing this type of series, and we'll move into the top 5 for the winter here pretty soon. But yeah, without further ado, lipless crankbaits, as the name says, they're crankbaits without a bill. So most crankbaits, their running depth is dictated by the size of the bill. So the shallow crankbaits have those small bills, or the deep crankbaits have those long bills, and that's what kind of dictates how deep they're going to go and the fish that you can target. The good thing about a lipless crankbait is that it's sinking, and so really the depth that you're targeting is dictated by the bait you choose and how heavy it is, and also just how you're retrieving the bait and how fast you're reeling it. So you have a lot of leeway, a lot of versatility in the areas that you can fish this bait, and I think that's what makes it so appealing. It was one of the first baits that I really got into when I was starting out bass fishing, and it caught me a lot of fish just because it's not complicated. It's really one of those baits that you can cast out and reel in and it pulls the fish to it just because of the vibration and the wiggle. And yeah, it's an old school bait. It's been catching fish for years, and it's grown. The technology has improved. The baits have gotten better over time, and you're kind of able to mess around with baits to get a little more dialed in on certain bites, but it can be as simple as just casting it out and reeling it in, and that'll catch you fish if you're really just looking to get started. Yeah, so some of the areas that I like to target when I'm throwing a lipless crankbait in the fall, definitely like looking for areas where there's bait fish around, so like creek arms and shallow pockets where there's bait fish being pushed up on by the bass. Those are great areas. Schools of bass, it's really easy to fire them up with a lipless crankbait just because you get that vibration, that sound, and you can move it pretty fast. And so yeah, the shallow pockets and creek arms are a great option. Long points are great, like points leading into creek arms this time of year are great. If you still got healthy grass, some of those grass flats, you can burn a lipless crankbait, just reeling it super fast over that grass and ripping it free, getting those reaction bites. That can be a great option. If your fish are out a little deeper, maybe they've already kind of moved into their winter areas a little bit, you can target deeper rock piles or drop-offs, ledges with these lipless crankbaits and fish something heavier like a LV500 and hopping that thing on the bottom kind of like a jig. So there's just endless amounts of areas that you can target and so many different ways that you can fish these baits. So wherever your fish are in their kind of their transitional stage, you should be able to target them effectively with a lipless crankbait. If you've got fish up shallow, you would throw something lighter, maybe like original Rattle trap, where you can cast it up shallow. It's not going to sink very fast, and you can reel that thing super quick. Or yeah, like I said, that LV500, a little heavier, you can fish it at the bottom in some deeper water. So you got a lot of flexibility. Some of the baits that I like, I already mentioned the LV500, the Lucky Craft. That's a staple up here, especially on Clear Lake. That thing just gets bit no matter how many guys throw it. Yeah, you would think those fish would get overpressured and they wouldn't eat it anymore, but year in and year out, they eat that bait. So the LV500 by Lucky Craft is a great one. It's 3/4 of an ounce, so a little heavier. You can fish it on bottom. You can also, if you're trying to fish like mid-depth, maybe 5 to 10 feet, and just fish quickly, having that heavier bait, you can fish it fast but still keep it down. And so if you got some deeper grass or something like that, it's still a good bait to use. Yeah, they make some different sizes. I think they make LV100, 200, maybe a 300, but those are different ways. I like the 500 just because it's heavier. You get that different, you can kind of target that different depth zone with the heavier bait. Another similar bait is the Jackall TN70. It's got the weight right at the head, like the chin of the bait, and so it's great for like I said, hopping it on bottom like a jig. It kind of sits with the nose down and it falls head first, so you get snagged up a little less. But it's another heavy bait. I think it might be 5/8 of an ounce or 3/4, just slightly under 3/4, I'm not sure, but another one of those heavy baits that's good to fish on bottom if those fish are kind of hunkered down a little bit more. The Spro Aruku Shad, or Aruka Shad, is a super loud one. It's got a lot of BBs in it, and so that's a great option if you got some stained water or your fish are real fired up, you want that loud rattle to get them going, that's a good option. That one's 3/4 of an ounce as well. So all those baits, you can fish them quickly in some of that mid-depth water column, or yeah, fishing it on bottom. And then a couple baits that you can fish shallower. You got the standard rattle trap. That one's a little lighter. I think it's a 1/2 ounce. Got a lot of BBs and sound as well. The Strike King Red Eye Shad. This is the 2-tap, so it's got kind of a 1-knocker. Not as loud, but then they also make the standard version with the smaller BBs. And that one, it comes in different sizes, but usually I'm fishing that in the 1/2 ounce, so a little bit shallower. You've also got the Yo-Zuri Rattlin vibe. That's a good one for fishing up shallow. Nice sound, 1/2 ounce. So you can reel that thing. If you're fishing 0 to 5 feet, you should have no problem. And really just casting it up on the bank and burning that thing. And then another bait that I've been messing around with is the Nomad Swim Tricks. It's kind of a little tiny lipless crankbait, but it has this interesting shimmy and swim almost like on the way down. So if you got some suspended fish, you can just let that thing fall through there. It's got a real lifelike action on the fall. But yeah, kind of a unique bait. It's another light bait, but you can fish it a little deeper and just let it do its thing on the fall, or yeah, great up shallow, just casting and reeling it around. But there's tons of lipless crankbaits on the market. The 13 Fishing Magic Man is a good one. Demiki Trimmer, I think. So there's tons of baits out there. Whatever your favorite brand is, I'm sure they make a good lipless crankbait. Those are just some of the ones that I like to use. But yeah, let's talk about color now. So in the past videos, just talking a lot about bait fish. So sticking with that, with the lipless crankbaits, it's kind of that shad profile, shad shape. And so shad colors do great. So anything white or like a sexy shad, or some of those more translucent baitfish colors like Ghost Minnow. It's not as bold as a solid white. It's kind of clearish, got some brown and green hues in there. Those are great for like cleaner water. And then I think this is like a Wakasagi color, so it's got a little bit of flash and foil in there, but it's still pretty translucent. So it's not super, not super bold, and not gonna kind of make those fish shy away if they're a little finicky, or if that water's super clean and they're getting a good look at it. Another great way to go, as the water's cooling off, we're getting into like early winter, late fall, those bass will start keying on crawfish a little bit. And so your reds, your spring craws, great option, like that dark red with the orange bottom. Or if you got some stained water, that super bright orange, bright red is a great option to get bites. But just experiment. If you think your fish are keying on bait fish, I would definitely go with those whites or those translucent shad imitating colors. And if you feel like those fish are maybe closer to the bottom, they're feeding on crawfish around rock, then go with those red colors. But you never know day in and day out, so sometimes it's good to have both tied on, or just experiment throughout the day if you're not getting bites. But yeah, those are some of my favorite colors to go with. You really can keep it pretty simple. Just the whites and the reds. Doesn't need to be super complicated. Next up, let's talk about line. So line is kind of another thing that you can use to control your depth that you're getting to. So the heavier the line, the wider the diameter, and the thicker the line is, the slower it's going to sink down. So if you're using something like 20-pound test fluorocarbon, it's going to sink, but it's going to have a little more drag, and so it'll keep your bait to fall a little slower. And say if you go down to 12-pound, you're going to get a faster sink. That line's going to cut through the water a little better. And so if you're trying to get out deep, get that bait down there quick, I would go lighter, maybe 12-pound fluorocarbon. And if you're trying to keep your bait up, maybe you're fishing around some grass, maybe the highest I would go with the Lipless would probably be 16-pound fluorocarbon. I think once you go past that, you kind of lose some of the vibration. It's kind of dulling out the action of the bait, and you don't want to lose that. So I think 16 would probably be the max if you're fishing around some heavy grass or just trying to keep your bait up in some shallow water. But usually I'm kind of in the middle. I like that 14-pound, especially if I'm hopping in on bottom and around a lot of rock, snagging up. I like to bump it up from the 12 to the 14, just so I have a little more abrasion resistance. Don't have to worry about breaking off as much on some of these baits. So 14-pound is kind of that sweet spot in the middle. It's usually what I have tied on, but I'll adjust as needed, like I said. Rod is really important for lipless crankbaits, just because of how the baits are built and how they're weighted. A lot of times the fish will eat it, they'll be hooked on the back hook, and it's just a lot of weight and leverage for them to throw these baits. And if you don't have the right rod, you're gonna lose a lot of fish. They're gonna pull off, they're gonna come up and shake their head, and the bait's gonna come flying at you. And so having a super soft crankbait rod is extremely important. That's gonna save you a lot of headache. It's gonna keep those fish pinned, and it just makes fighting the fish easier. The rod's gonna absorb a lot of that shock. It's gonna do the work for you, fighting the fish, and you really just, you know, play your drag and let those fish do their thing until they're tired, and then you can get them in. But overpowering them with a heavier rod, it's just going to be a headache for you. You're going to lose a lot of fish and you're not going to have a good time out there. So make sure you're using a crankbait rod, a moderate action rod, something with a lot of give, a lot of bend. A lot of brands, they'll say they'll have like a lipless crankbait rod or rattle trap rod. But if they don't, just look for those CBs, those crankbait rods, and that moderate or moderate fast action. So the one, get out of here, boy. The one that I like for most of my lipless crankbait fishing is this Ritual Angling Jarrett Littner series rod. It's a 7.6 heavy. I don't really think it's a heavy, it's more like a medium heavy, but it's a moderate action. So it's got a long soft tip, and so it loads deep into the blink. And so when I'm like yo-yoing that thing and I hook up, it'll just load up, and when those fish come up to jump to, it'll just load deep into the rod and keep those fish pinned. So you can see it's got a lot of give. But I like that rod. It's a 7.6, so it's a little longer. And so if I'm hopping that LV 500 out deep, I've got a little bit more leverage. And also when I'm reeling into them and setting the hook, I can move a little more line. And also just, you get a little more casting distance. So that's kind of why I like that longer rod. I'm a taller guy, so it works for me. But whatever you're comfortable with, I would say 7 foot to 7.6 is probably good. I wouldn't go any shorter just because you're going to limit your casting distance, and I wouldn't go any longer just because it's going to get a little annoying dealing with the super long rod on those lipless crankbaits. And another one of my other rods, I think I talked about it in my shallow crankbait video, but the Dobbins Fury 705 CB, so that's a 7 foot rod, a little shorter. So if I'm fishing up shallower, making more target casts, I don't need that long rod, I don't need as much distance, so I can go with that 7 foot, but it's a very similar action, very similar bend, real soft, real bendy, and that thing will just load up and keep those fish pinned on these little treble hooks. And yeah, now that I mentioned it, swap out your treble hooks like basically all those other hard baits. Just stock hooks, those companies, they tend to skimp on the quality of the hooks just to keep costs down. So swap out your hooks. I like the Gamakatsus, the EWGs, or just the standard round bend trebles, the 1X, and also the owner STX or ST-36s. Those are good thin wire but strong hooks. So make sure you're swapping out those hooks. Generally, most lipless crankbaits, a size 4 will do the job, but depending on the size of the bait, you might go down to like size 6 or something like that. But definitely swap out your hooks, and you can even mess around with some of these bladed hooks. This VMC, they make a hook with a blade on it, so if you're around schools of bait or you just want some extra flash, that's a cool little customization. You can kind of start tinkering with your baits a little more. But yeah, for the most part, just keeping it simple with those Gamakatsu or those owners. Super strong, but a huge upgrade from the stock hooks that you get right out of the package. And last, I think, talking about reels. As always, I'm fishing Shimano reels. So I've got a Metanium on one of my rods, and I've got a Scorpion on the other one. But really, the reel doesn't matter. Whatever brand you like is great. I would say that the speed of the reel is probably more important. So anywhere from, I think 6.2 to 1 is a little slow for me. I like a 7.1 to 1, and that's usually the gear ratio that I live in. It just allows you to, if you're burning that bait up shallow, you're reeling quick, you're not overworking yourself with a slower reel. So that 7 to 1, you can move that bait pretty quick. And also, if you're hopping that bait on bottom, a lot of times the fish will eat it on the fall, so on your slack line, and you want to be able to pick up that line quick and get a hook into them. So having that quicker reel is really important. Something with a good drag, obviously, because you hook a big fish, you're gonna have to play it a little bit. So making sure you got a smooth drag and you're comfortable playing with that. Or you can just free spool and play it like that with your thumb. If you're proficient in doing that, I would say don't do it if you don't know how to do it, but that's another good option just to be safe. But yeah, lipless crankbaits, a great, super versatile bait all year pretty much. In the springtime, it's a fish killer. In the summertime, you can reel that thing fast through the grass and get a lot of bites. And then this time of year, moving out a little deeper and kind of fishing it on bottom can be a great option. So if you haven't thrown one, definitely look into adding it to your arsenal. They're loud, they're a little bit obnoxious, but they get bites, they get fish fired up. And even in that cold water, you can get those fish to react to something moving. So yeah, check Lipless Crankbaits out. Thank y'all for tuning in to this series. It's been nice for me to kind of share some of my knowledge and hopefully help y'all catch some more fish out there. So if you have any questions, drop them down in the comments section. Like I said, if you enjoyed this series, please let me know. If you have any suggestions on what I could change, I'm open to all feedback. And yeah, planning to start off the top 5 for the winter season here pretty soon, so be on the lookout for that. It's going to be some different baits, some different ways to approach things, and as that water cools off, the techniques change a little bit, but still going to be a lot of fun baits, great information, and yeah, just keep continuing to help y'all catch more fish out there. So yeah, appreciate the support, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.